Lydia and Maria had always sat on opposite sides of the church, strangers bound only by the routine of Sunday service. But that morning, a single restless step would turn their quiet sanctuary into a scene of chaos, fear, and survival. The sun rose over Cedar Creek, spilling golden light across quiet streets and neat houses. It was a Sunday morning like any other, the kind that promised peace and routine. Birds chirped softly, and the faint hum of early traffic drifted through the town. Inside the small church at the heart of the community, volunteers were arranging hymnals and polishing wooden pews, preparing for the congregation that would soon arrive. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the lingering aroma of candle wax, creating a comforting, familiar atmosphere. People trickled in slowly, greeting one another with nods, handshakes, and warm smiles. Children ran ahead, their laughter bouncing off the walls, and elders moved carefully down the aisles, their faces calm and serene. The congregation settled into their usual spots, some kneeling in quiet prayer while others quietly chatted, exchanging stories of the past week. The church, with its tall stained glass windows and sunlit altar, felt like a sanctuary from the world outside. Amid the routine, a woman arrived, entering through the side door with a hurried, uneven pace. She was dressed plainly, but there was something in her eyes that immediately caught attention, a restless, jittery energy that did not belong in the serene space. She moved with quick, precise steps, glancing over her shoulder and scanning the room as if searching for someone or something. A few worshippers noticed her, whispering among themselves about her odd behavior, but most assumed she was simply late or distracted. She carried a small bag slung over her shoulder, swinging slightly with each step, and clutched it tightly as if it contained something important. The service was set to begin soon, and the air inside the church was a mixture of calm anticipation and routine reverence. Soft rays of sunlight filtered through the stained glass, casting colorful patterns across the wooden floor. The woman made her way down the aisle with a strange determination, her gaze fixed somewhere beyond the altar. She paused briefly near the front, her movements deliberate yet erratic. A faint tension seemed to ripple through the air, unnoticed by most, but enough to make a few observant worshippers uneasy. The choir began their warm-up, voices blending harmoniously, and the woman shifted slightly, her attention flickering between the singers and the open space ahead of her. The congregation, absorbed in familiar rituals, continued their preparations for the service. Hymnals were opened, candles were lit, and gentle conversations continued, filling the room with ordinary sounds of devotion. Children whispered excitedly about the stories they would hear, and the elders shared quiet jokes, unaware of the tension growing near the front pews. The woman adjusted her bag, her fingers tightening around it, and moved closer to the center aisle. There was a sense of unease in her posture, a restless energy that contrasted sharply with the calm devotion surrounding her. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it hinted at the storm that would soon break, a storm that would turn the peaceful Sunday morning into chaos. No one knew the reasons behind her anxiety or the thoughts racing through her mind. To the casual observer, she was just another late arrival, but her presence carried an unseen weight. The atmosphere in the church, serene and familiar just moments before, now held a fragile tension. Every footstep she took echoed slightly too loudly in the quiet sanctuary, each glance seeming calculated, deliberate. As worshippers continued to settle in, the air held a quiet anticipation, unaware that the calm of the morning was about to be shattered. The church, a place of safety and peace, was about to witness an extraordinary event, one that would leave the congregation stunned and change the memory of that Sunday forever. The service began with soft, harmonious singing, the kind that usually filled the church with warmth and a sense of togetherness. Congregants followed along with open hymnals, their voices blending in gentle unison. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting the pews with patches of red, blue, and gold. Everything appeared normal, as if it were any other Sunday. Yet, near the front, the woman's movements became more pronounced, more erratic. She shifted from foot to foot, her hands twisting the strap of her bag. Some of the worshippers glanced at her, noticing the tension in her body, the restless darting of her eyes. A few nudged one another quietly, exchanging worried looks, but the service continued, carried forward by the familiar rhythm of prayers and hymns. She began to move closer to the altar, weaving slowly through the pews, and her presence started to unsettle those around her. The congregation, immersed in song, initially tried to ignore her, assuming she might be looking for a seat or simply lost in thought. But there was an unmistakable intensity in the way she scanned the room, a feeling that she was not here to worship in the ordinary sense. Her fingers flexed against the bag at her side, and a faint metallic glint caught the sunlight as she adjusted her grip. A cold shiver ran down the spines of those nearest to her, though most still focused on the service, unwilling to believe anything could go wrong in this place of faith. Suddenly, she pulled a knife from her bag, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. The congregation froze, disbelief paralyzing their movements. The air seemed to thicken, filled with tension so sharp it could be felt in every corner of the sanctuary. Screams erupted from the pews, a chaotic chorus of fear and shock. People scrambled in every direction, some ducking behind benches, others bolting for the doors. The choir stopped mid-note, their voices silenced by terror, leaving the church eerily quiet except for the rising panic. The calm morning had vanished, replaced by a dangerous, unpredictable presence. The woman brandished the knife, moving unpredictably, forcing the congregation to scatter. The once peaceful altar, where sunlight bathed wooden carvings and polished floors, now became the center of fear. Shouts and hurried footsteps echoed through the space as people tried to avoid her, some clutching children or guiding elderly members towards safety. The sanctity of the church seemed suspended, replaced by a surreal sense of chaos. For a brief moment, it was impossible to see the logic in her actions, to understand why a place of worship had suddenly become a stage for terror. Among the fear and confusion, a few individuals tried to act. Some moved cautiously toward her, hoping to distract or calm her, while others continued helping people escape. The knife reflected the light from the windows, glinting with a deadly promise that made every moment tense and uncertain. The church, once a haven, had transformed into a battleground of survival, each second stretching painfully long. The congregation's prayers, whispered amid panic, mingled with the sounds of frantic movement, creating an atmosphere heavy with dread. No one could predict what she might do next, and the sense of danger pressed down on every worshiper, making the once familiar walls feel alien and threatening. The morning that began in peace had become a nightmare, and no one in that church would leave unchanged. The chaos inside the church seemed endless. People were pressing against the walls, hiding behind pews, and trembling with fear, their hearts pounding as the woman moved unpredictably through the sanctuary. Her eyes were wild, scanning every corner, her grip on the knife tight and unrelenting. Even the usually quiet elders found themselves stumbling over each other in panic, trying to protect the children in their care. The pews, polished and orderly moments ago, were now scattered with hymnals, fallen purses, and shoes abandoned in the rush to escape. The air was thick with a mix of fear, sweat, and the faint smell of candle wax, once comforting, but now suffocating. Every second stretched unbearably long, the congregation frozen in shock yet desperate to act, unsure of how to restore safety. A few brave members moved cautiously toward the woman, their hands raised in slow, deliberate gestures meant to signal peace. They tried to speak calmly, hoping to catch her attention and de-escalate the situation, but she ignored them, her focus elsewhere, shifting from one terrified worshiper to another. The knife glinted under the light of the tall windows, each movement a threat that forced the nearest individuals to freeze or retreat. The atmosphere was tense, every eye fixed on her, every heartbeat echoing the danger. A faint sob escaped from a child hidden beneath a pew, and the sound only heightened the urgency, the reminder of vulnerability making the situation more unbearable. The woman moved closer to the center aisle, her steps unpredictable, her presence dominating the once sacred space. People whispered frantic suggestions to one another, some trying to coordinate distractions, others attempting to guide the elderly or children toward the exits. A few tried to maintain composure, moving in slow, careful steps to position themselves between her and the most vulnerable. Every movement was calculated, but the fear of provoking her kept many frozen in place. Each second carried the threat of violence, the knife a constant reminder of the fragile line between safety and catastrophe. The tension seemed to build with every passing moment, the church no longer a place of worship, but a stage for a crisis that had spiraled out of control. From the back pews, some congregants quietly prayed, their voices trembling, hoping their words might reach beyond the chaos and somehow calm her. Others were too consumed by the immediate danger to think of prayer, focusing only on survival, on keeping themselves and those around them safe. The scent of fear mingled with incense, turning the once familiar air into something heavy, almost tangible, pressing on everyone's chest. Amid the turmoil, a few perceptive worshippers noticed subtle changes in her movements. Her breathing was uneven, her eyes darting not just at them but at the surroundings, hinting at an inner struggle they could not fully understand. Slowly, carefully, they attempted to engage her indirectly, offering space, moving in ways that suggested no threat, hoping to reach the part of her that might respond to calm. For the first time since the chaos began, there was a sense that her attention could be redirected, that the situation might shift if approached with patience. The tension remained suffocating, but a fragile thread of hope began to emerge, a possibility that the nightmare could end without tragedy, though no one could yet be certain of the outcome. Just when it seemed the chaos could spiral further out of control, an unexpected figure appeared at the back of the church. A visitor, calm and deliberate, moved quietly through the panicked crowd, assessing the scene with careful eyes. Unlike the others, who were frozen or frantically trying to escape, this person remained steady, their movements controlled and purposeful. Every step was calculated, avoiding sudden gestures that might provoke the woman with the knife. They kept their distance, watching her closely, noting the way she shifted her weight, how her grip tightened and loosened on the blade. There was an intensity in her gaze, but also a flicker of hesitation, subtle and fleeting, that the visitor recognized immediately. As the woman brandished the knife, the visitor slowly edged closer, speaking softly in words that could not be heard over the screams and hurried footsteps. Their body language was non-threatening, hands open and relaxed, and their eyes focused on her movements, never turning away. Congregants pressed against walls and hid behind pews, watching in awe and fear as someone approached her with such courage. A sense of hope began to stir, fragile but tangible, as the visitor continued to advance methodically, creating a bridge between panic and possible resolution. Each step was measured, every movement deliberate, and the woman's attention began to shift, her wild eyes flicking toward the calm figure navigating the chaos. The church, once filled with shouts and frantic cries, now held a different tension, one of anticipation and cautious optimism. The visitor adjusted their approach, moving slowly and purposefully to position themselves between the woman and the nearest congregants. Their calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the fear surrounding them, a steady presence that seemed to absorb the panic in the room. The knife, still raised, reflected the sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows, but the woman's movements began to show uncertainty, a hesitation that had not been there before. Every breath she took was visible, shallow and uneven, signaling a mind on the edge of collapse and decision. Step by step, the visitor closed the distance, never breaking eye contact, never making sudden moves that might trigger an aggressive response. The congregation held its collective breath, frozen in place, witnessing the delicate negotiation unfolding before them. A few individuals cautiously emerged from their hiding spots, encouraged by the visitors' calm, moving slowly to guide others toward safety. Children clung to adults. Elders steadied themselves against pews, and the church, despite the lingering fear, began to feel a fragile sense of order returning. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the woman's grip on the knife loosened. Her chest heaved as she stared at the visitor, her eyes wide with exhaustion and confusion. The tense seconds stretched as the visitor maintained composure, never rushing, never threatening, guiding her toward the realization that violence was not inevitable. Moments later, the authorities arrived, moving quickly to secure the situation. The woman was restrained without incident, and the immediate threat dissolved. Relief washed over the church like a sudden wave, leaving behind trembling worshippers, scattered belongings, and the echoes of terror now fading into cautious calm. The morning that began with chaos and fear had shifted, thanks to a presence that brought steadiness and hope in the face of uncertainty, leaving the congregation stunned but safe. In the days following the incident, the town of Cedar Creek struggled to comprehend what had happened inside its small church. News spread quickly, carried by whispers in grocery stores, coffee shops, and community gatherings. People recounted the chaos, the fear, and the courage they had witnessed, each retelling highlighting different details, but all agreeing on one truth: the morning had been unforgettable. The congregation returned slowly, hesitant yet determined to reclaim their place of worship. The pews had been rearranged, candles replaced, and hymnals restored, but the memory of the woman with the knife lingered in every corner. The church, once a symbol of unwavering peace, now held a quiet tension, a reminder of how quickly life could change. Investigations revealed more about the woman who had caused the chaos. She had been struggling with severe personal issues, some hidden from friends and family, some from the wider community. Authorities reported that her erratic behavior was the result of a combination of mental health struggles and extreme stress, pressures that had accumulated until she reached a breaking point. While no one could excuse the fear she had caused, understanding her background brought a complex mix of empathy and disbelief to those who had witnessed the event. Psychologists and local counselors spoke to the congregation, helping them process the trauma and encouraging conversations about mental health and support within the community. As the weeks passed, the people of Cedar Creek began to share stories of bravery and quick thinking from that day. Some recalled how neighbors had guided the elderly and children to safety, while others highlighted the courage of the visitor who had calmly approached the woman and helped prevent tragedy. These acts became small beacons of hope amid the lingering fear. People spoke of ordinary members of the congregation who had risen to extraordinary challenges, transforming panic into purposeful action. The church, though scarred by the memory, slowly became a place where strength and resilience were celebrated alongside faith. Community gatherings were organized to heal and reflect. Support groups formed, offering space for people to talk about what they had witnessed, the emotions they had felt, and the lingering anxiety that had not yet dissipated. Clergy led sessions on forgiveness, understanding, and the importance of vigilance without fear. Stories of the incident were recounted not to sensationalize, but to remind the town of the delicate balance between peace and chaos, and how courage could emerge unexpectedly in even the most ordinary individuals. The church reopened its doors fully, its congregation returning with a mix of caution and determination to reclaim their sanctuary. Months later, Cedar Creek had begun to regain a sense of normalcy, though the memory of that fateful Sunday remained vivid. The incident became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the unpredictability of human behavior and the power of calm, measured action in moments of crisis. The woman had been taken into care, her story a complex mixture of tragedy and warning. The church, once again filled with hymns and prayers, stood as a testament to resilience, to the courage of those who had faced fear head-on, and to the fragile, precious nature of peace. The community had been shaken, but it had endured, forever changed yet stronger, a living reminder of how quickly calm could turn to chaos and how courage could restore it.